The Urantia Book, Section 2, The Local Universe. Paper 50, The Planetary Princes. While belonging to the order of Lanonandek Sons, the Planetary Princes are so specialized in service that they are commonly regarded as a distinct group. After their Melchizedek certification as secondary Lanonandeks, these local universe sons are assigned to the reserves of their order on the constellation headquarters. From here they are assigned to various duties by the system sovereign and eventually commissioned as planetary princes and sent forth to rule the evolving inhabited worlds. The signal for a system sovereign to act in the matter of assigning a ruler to a given planet is the reception of a request from the life carriers for the dispatch of an administrative head to function on this planet whereon they have established life and developed intelligent evolutionary beings. All planets which are inhabited by evolutionary mortal creatures have assigned to them a planetary ruler of this order of sonship. 1. Mission of the Princes. The planetary prince and his assistant brethren represent the nearest personalized approach, aside from incarnation, that the eternal Son of Paradise can make to the lowly creatures of time and space. True, the Creator Son touches the creatures of the realms through his spirit. But the planetary prince is the last of the orders of personal sons, extending out from paradise to the children of men. The infinite spirit comes very near in the persons of the guardians of destiny and other angelic beings. The Universal Father lives in man by the pre-personal presence of the ministry monitors, also known as the thought adjusters, but the planetary prince represents the last effort of the eternal Son and his sons to draw near you. On a newly inhabited world, the planetary prince is the sole representative of complete divinity, springing from the Creator Son, the offspring of the Universal Father, and the Eternal Son, and the Divine Minister, the Universe Daughter of the Infinite Spirit. The Prince of a newly inhabited world is surrounded by a loyal corps of helpers and assistants and by large numbers of the ministering spirits. But the directing corps of such new worlds must be of the lower orders of the administrators of a system in order to be innately sympathetic with and understanding of the planetary problems and difficulties. And all of this effort to provide sympathetic rulership for the evolutionary worlds entails the increased liability that these near human personalities may be led astray by the exaltation of their own minds over and above the will of the supreme rulers. Being quite alone as representatives of divinity on the individual planets, these sons are tested severely. and Nebadon has suffered the misfortune of several rebellions. In the creation of the system sovereigns and the planetary princes, there occurs the personalization of a concept that has been getting farther and farther away from the universal Father and the eternal Son, and there is an increasing danger of losing the sense of proportion as to one's self-importance and a greater likelihood of failure to keep a proper grasp of the values and relationships of the numerous orders of divine beings and their graduations of authority. That the Father is not personally present in the local universe also imposes a certain test of faith and loyalty on all these sons. But not often do these world princes fail in their missions of organizing and administering the inhabited spheres, and their success greatly facilitates the subsequent missions of the material sons, who come to engraft the higher forms of creature life on the primitive man of the worlds. Their rule also does much to prepare the planets for the paradise sons of God, who subsequently come to judge the worlds and to inaugurate successive dispensations. 2. Planetary administration. All planetary princes are under the universe administration jurisdiction of Gabriel, the chief executive of Michael, while in immediate authority they are subject to the executive mandates of the system sovereigns. The planetary princes may at any time seek the counsel of the Melchizedeks, their former instructors and sponsors, but they are not arbitrarily required to ask for such assistance, and if such aid is not voluntarily requested, the Melchizedeks do not interfere with the planetary administration. These world rulers may also avail themselves of the advice of the 24 counselors assembled from the bestowal worlds of the system. In Satania, these counselors are at present all natives of Urantia, and there is an analogous council of 70 at the constellation headquarters, also selected from the evolutionary beings of the realms. The rule of the evolutionary planets in their early and unsettled careers is largely autocratic. The planetary princes organize their specialized groups of assistants from among their corps of planetary aides. They usually surround themselves with a supreme council of 12, but this is variously chosen and diversely constituted on the different worlds. A planetary prince may also have as assistants one or more of the third order of his own group of sonship, and sometimes on certain worlds one of his own order, a secondary Lanonandek associate. The entire staff of a world ruler consists of personalities of the infinite spirit, and certain types of higher evolved beings and ascending mortals from other worlds. Such a staff averages about 1,000, and as the planet progresses, this corps of helpers may be increased up to 100,000 or more. At any time, need is felt for more helpers. The planetary princes have only to make request of their brothers, the system sovereigns, and the petition is granted forthwith. Planets vary greatly in nature and organization and in administration, but all provide for tribunals of justice. The judicial system of the local universe has its beginnings in the tribunals of a planetary prince, which are presided over. Its beginnings, which are presided over by a member, of his personal staff. The decrees of such courts reflect a highly fatherly and discretionary attitude. All problems involving more than the regulation of the planetary inhabitants are subject to appeal to the higher tribunals. But the affairs of his world domain are largely adjusted in accordance with the personal discretion of the prince. The roving commissions of conciliators serve and supplement the planetary tribunals, and both spirit and physical controllers are subject to the findings of these conciliators, but no arbitrary execution is ever carried out without the consent of the constellation father. For the, between quotation marks, Most Highs rule in the kingdoms of men. And these are the constellation fathers too. The controllers and transformers of planetary assignment are also able to collaborate with angels and other orders of celestial beings in rendering these latter personalities visible to mortal creatures. On special occasions, the seraphic helpers and even the Melchizedeks can and do make themselves visible to the inhabitants of the evolutionary worlds. The principal reason for bringing mortal ascenders from the system capital as a part of the staff of the planetary prince is to facilitate communication with the inhabitants of the realm. 3. The prince's corporal staff. On going to young world, a planetary prince usually takes with him a group of volunteer ascending beings from the local system headquarters. These ascenders accompany the prince as advisors and helpers in the work of early race improvement. This corps of material helpers constitutes the connecting link between the prince and the world races. The Urantia prince Caligastia had a corps of 100 such helpers. Such volunteer assistants are citizens of a system capital, and none of them have fused with their indwelling adjusters. The status of the adjusters of such volunteer servers remains as of the residential standing on the system headquarters, while these Morantia progressors temporarily revert to a former material state. The life carriers, the architects of form, provide such volunteers with new physical bodies, which they occupy for the periods of their planetary sojourn. These personality forms, while exempt from the ordinary diseases of the realms, are, like the early Morantia bodies, subject to certain accidents of a mechanical nature. The prince's corporal staff are usually removed from the planet in connection with the next education at the time of the second son's arrival on the sphere. Before leaving, they customarily assign their various duties to their mutual offspring and to certain superior native volunteers. On those worlds where these helpers of the prince have been permitted to mate with the superior groups of the native races, such offspring usually succeed them. And actually, this was also in the meaning here on Urantia. And so there would be chosen members of several human groups that were allowed, the women were allowed to mate with these helpers of the staff of the planetary prince. So this is why we need to understand that the Bible is so incomplete in information, and there have been created so many stories about so-called Nephilim and so on, but we do need to hunger and thirst for higher spiritual truths so that we get more and a deeper understanding of what actually has happened here. There's a Wild West story described in the Bible, and this story is so incomplete, and because of this humanity started to believe in fallen angels and blah blah blah, and they started to see everything from a negative viewpoint. But this is because they lack hunger and thirst for higher spiritual truths. And that is why it is of great importance to always have an open view for new information, especially information that can give you a deeper background on what has happened. And actually, you can say, can help you to debunk this by men written and also by men themselves declared holy book. These assistants to the planetary prince seldom mate with the world races, but they do always mate among themselves. Two classes of beings result from these unions: the primary type of midway creatures and certain high types of material beings who remain attached to the prince's staff after their parents have been removed from the planet at the time of the arrival of Adam and Eve. So each world knows an Adam and Eve. So this is not the only world that received an Adam and Eve. And also it's about time that we start to debunk the story written in the Bible about Adam and Eve, because that story is childish and so incomplete, and also not correctly written down. These children do not mate with the mortal races except in certain emergencies, and then only by direction of the planetary prince. In such an event, their children, the grandchildren of the corporal staff, are in status as of the superior races of their day and generation. All the offspring of these semi-material assistants of the planetary prince are adjuster indwelt. At the end of the prince's dispensation, when the time comes for this reversion staff, between quotation marks, to be returned to the system headquarters for the resumption of the paradise career, these ascenders present themselves to the life carriers for the purpose of yielding up their material bodies. They enter the transition, slumber, and awaken, delivered from their mortal investment and clothed with Morontia forms, ready for seraphic transportation back to the system capital, where their detached adjusters await them. They are a whole dispensation behind their Jerusalem class, but they have gained a unique and extraordinary experience, a rare chapter in the career of an ascending mortal. 4. The planetary headquarters and schools. The prince's corporal staff early organize the planetary schools of training and culture, wherein the cream of the evolutionary races are instructed and then sent forth to teach these better ways to their people. So among all the races, all the human groups, there are being chosen the most qualified of them for going to these planetary schools of training and culture. And so then eventually when they have finished this, they will be sent back to their own peoples, and then with the task and mission to give them training and instruction and education about all the things they have learned in these planetary schools of training and culture. These schools of the prince are located at the material headquarters of the planet. Much of the physical work connected with the establishment of this headquarters city is performed by the corporal staff. Such headquarters cities or settlements of the early times of the planetary prince are very different from what a Urantia mortal might imagine. They are, in comparison with later ages, simple, being characterized by mineral embellishment and by relatively advanced material construction. And all of this stands in contrast with the Adamic regime, centering around a garden headquarters, from which their work in behalf of the races is prosecuted during the second dispensation of the universe sons. So, with knowing all this so far, and I've uploaded many audio videos now. I finished off section 1 of the Urantia book, all about the central and super universes. I'm almost finished with the section 2, all about the local universe. If we go through all this information so far, then we must come to the conclusion that all these questions we, the people of Urantia, have about higher civilizations and well-developed and very intelligent civilizations, and where they come from, and humanity so far is still question marking and guessing about all these civilizations. But I think when you start reading this fifth epochal revelation, then more and more of these question marks are being questioned and answered. And the more I come further in this book, the more I start to come to realization that all these, what humanity is calling unknown, very high intelligent civilization with certain buildings and architecture, that these are actually coming from all these beings that is mentioned. So this architecture that is being set here by the material son and daughter, the Adam and Eve, the Planetary Prince, and his staff, and so on, so on. So I think that everything traces back to this book, to this fifth epochal revelation. And so that is why I'm saying to encourage yourself to buy yourselves a copy and to start reading it yourselves in your own pace, and also to find yourselves a study group so you can study the information with others whom are already studying this information for more than 10 years. I proceed. In the headquarters settlement on your world, every human habitation was provided with abundance of land. Although the remote tribes continued in hunting and food foraging, the students and teachers in the prince's schools were all agriculturists and horticulturists. And this is still going on. We still have horticulturists, yeah? It is very unfortunate that the agricultural sector in this world is under a huge bombardment of those who try to ruin this entire agricultural sector in this world. And these people that want to have control over everything, and thus also over the food, which they already have, by the way, for a long time, they are trying to force the human race, so their fellow brothers and sisters, to eat synthetic, artificial, in laboratories produced food, which has nothing to do with real food that has seen sunlight, rain, hail, snow, frost, dew, and whose roots have tasted the soil. So we are now seeing more and more ways how people can easily grow their own food in manners that soil and sunlight is no longer needed anymore, because the sunlight is now replaced by LED light, and the soil is replaced by water. So water doesn't contain all the nutrients that are necessary for a human body. Water is needed because water also contains certain nutrients, but soil contains a lot of nutrients that the human body needs. So if we are starting to grow food in an artificial way, what do we get? Humans who will deprive themselves from the essential nutrients that are actually only to be found in the soil. Soil is needed to have a healthy body. The time was about equally divided between the following pursuits. 1. Physical labor, cultivation of the soil associated with home building and embellishment. 2. Social activities, play, performances, and cultural social groupings. 3. Educational application, individual instruction in connection with family group teaching, supplemented by specialized class training. 4. Vocational training, schools of marriage and homemaking, the schools of art and craft training, and the classes for the training of teachers, secular, cultural, and religious. 5. Spiritual culture, the teacher brotherhood, the enlightenment of childhood and youth groups, and the training of adopted native children as missionaries to their people. So this system was actually in the Garden of Eden, and it was in the meaning that was also in the plan of Adam and Eve, to have this, what I have named so far, implemented all over the world in each and every human group. Eventually, we will go back to this system again, because everything on Urantia is in a certain way completely out of balance. The spiritual the educational system on Urantia is a complete joke. Children do not learn what they should have to learn. Children are not learn spiritual important things. So they are not cultivating their spiritual life, which is very important, because we have to deal with a body, a soul, and a mind, with the 3 levels. So these levels need to develop, and they develop through specific sets of teachings and education. Well, this is gone from almost all schools in the school system of this world. Why? Because those fallen brothers and sisters who want to dominate the rest, they do not want creative people anymore. They want worker bees. So robotic human-looking beings from flesh that do exactly as they want them to do. Well, knowing this, then you can imagine that these type of created people are not evolving, but devolving tremendously, which means that their soul stagnates and dies off eventually, if this takes a too long time and goes on from generation unto generation. And then you can so say that the group soul of the human species eventually stagnates and comes into a process of dying. So this is something we need to be far more aware of. So that is why I say that to all my fellow brothers and sisters, please hunger and thirst for higher spiritual truths, and stop being busy with nonsense that is bombarded to you 24/7 a day. A planetary prince is not visible to mortal beings. It is a test of faith to believe the representations of the semi-material beings of his staff. But these schools of culture and training are well adapted to the needs of each planet, and there soon develops a keen and laudatory rivalry among the races of men in their efforts to gain entrance to these various institutions of learning. From such a world center of culture and achievement, there gradually radiates to all people an uplifting and civilizing influence which slowly and certainly transforms the evolutionary races. Meantime, the educated and spiritualized children of the surrounding peoples who have been adopted and trained in the princes' schools are returning to their native groups and to the best of their ability are there establishing new and potent centers of learning and culture, which they carry on according to the plan of the princes' schools. Well, if we look at Urantia, we still are dealing with very primitive people, who still are functioning on a primitive level. This should not have to be the case in this day and age if everything went exactly according to evolutional plan here on Urantia. But due, unfortunate, to all the rebellion from Lucifer as well as Caligustia, a huge delay and stagnation of this process took place here on Urantia. And now we see a scattering of the plan of the planetary prince and the material son and daughter Adam and Eve. On Urantia, these plans for planetary progress and cultural advancement were well underway, proceeding most satisfactorily when the whole enterprise was brought to a rather sudden and most inglorious end by Caligustia's adherence to Lucifer rebellion. It was one of the most profoundly shocking episodes of this rebellion for me to learn of the callous perfidy of one of my own order of sonship, Caligustia, who in deliberation and with malice forethought systematically perverted the instruction and poisoned the teaching provided in all the Urantia planetary schools in operation at that time. So now we can read that this prince, this fallen planetary prince, infected the entire system with the ideas stemming and coming from Lucifer. The wreck of these schools was speedy and complete. Many of the offspring of the ascenders of the prince's materialized staff remained loyal, deserting the ranks of Caligustia. These loyalists were encouraged by the Melchizedek receivers of Urantia, and in later times their descendants did much to uphold the planetary concepts of truth and righteousness, so that not everything got lost here and into full darkness. So it's due to them that actually the concepts of truth and righteousness as well as the spiritual light stayed in existence here. The work of these loyal evangels helped to prevent the total obliteration of spiritual truth on Urantia. These courageous souls and their descendants kept alive some knowledge of the Father's rule and preserved for the world races the concept of the successive planetary dispensations of the various orders of divine sons. Point 5. Progressive civilization. The loyal princes of the inhabited worlds are permanently attached to the planets of their original assignment. Paradise, sons, and their dispensations may come and go, but a successful planetary prince continues on as the ruler of his realm. His work is quite independent of the missions of the higher sons, being designed to foster the development of planetary civilization. The progress of civilization is hardly alike on any two planets. The details of the unfoldment of mortal evolution are very different on numerous dissimilar worlds. Notwithstanding these many diversifications of planetary development along physical, intellectual, and social lines, all evolutionary spheres progress in certain well-defined directions. Under the benign rule of a planetary prince, augmented by the material sons, and punctuated by the periodic missions of the paradise sons. The mortal races on an average world of time and space will successively pass through the following 7 developmental epochs. 1. The nutrition epoch. The pre-human creatures and the dawn races of primitive man are chiefly concerned with food problems. These evolving beings spend their waking hours either in seeking food or in fighting, offensively or defensively. The food quest is paramount in the minds of these early ancestors of subsequent civilization. 2. The security age. Just as soon as the primitive hunter can spare any time from the search for food, he turns this leisure to augmenting his security. More and more attention is devoted to the technique of war. Homes are fortified and the clans are solidified by mutual fear and by the inculcation of hate for foreign groups. Self-preservation is a pursuit which always follows self-maintenance. So this is actually what we are still seeing happening here on Urantia. All these wars that we are still in for a too long time are being done by people whom are in an upper state of fear and insecurity. And they do not care about their fellow brothers and sisters whom they kill for their feeling more secure. Yeah? So that is also one of the reasons for wars. It is primitive. So this means that all these fallen brothers and sisters who wants to have control over the rest, they are in a very deep primitive state. They have sunk into such a primitive state of beingness, and with this they sunk deeply into fear and insecurity. And so now we can get a idea of where things as sociopathy and psychopathy and narcissism is actually all about. It is not only childhood trauma, but it's more to it. So we still see several waves on this planet of primitivism and barbarianism. 3. The material comfort era. After food problems have been partially solved and some degree of security has been attained, the additional leisure is utilized to promote personal comfort. Luxury vies with necessity in occupying the center of the stage of human activities. Such an age is all too often characterized by, here it comes, tyranny, intolerance, gluttony, and drunkenness. Wow! The weaker elements of the races incline towards excesses and brutality. Gradually, these pleasure-seeking weaklings are subjugated by the more strong and truth-loving elements of the advancing civilization. So, knowing this, we can make the conclusion that we are dealing with several levels of development among the human race here on Urantia. Some of us are walking towards becoming more advanced and are returning back to truth, righteousness, and the higher spiritual principles of life. Some prefer to stay in the primitiveness and are still in these first two levels or first three levels. And then we go to the fourth level, which is the quest for knowledge and wisdom. So this is also among the human race. There are brothers and sisters who spend their life for the quest for knowledge and wisdom. So food, security, pleasure, and leisure provide the foundation for the development of culture and the spread of knowledge. The effort to execute knowledge results in wisdom. And when a culture has learned how to profit and improve by experience, civilization has really arrived. Food, security, and material comfort still dominate society, but many forward-looking individuals are hungering for knowledge and thirsting for wisdom. Every child is provided an opportunity to learn by doing. Education is the watchword of these ages. So every child is provided an opportunity to learn by doing. Education is the watchword of these ages. So instead of spending hours on our ass in school classes, which is actually unhealthy, we should have a school system that is far more based on doing things and bringing things into experience. Some professions have this. Go to the nursery education, to become a nurse. You cannot only sit for hours in the school banks and then eventually after you have finished, then go into practice. So that is not handy. So this is combined. You go in the beginning for several weeks to school, and then you go for several weeks into practice, which is the best way, of course, because then you can develop experiences. Then we have the fifth epoch, the epoch of philosophy and brotherhood. When mortals learn to think and begin to profit by experience, they become philosophical. They start out to reason within themselves and to exercise discriminative judgment. The society of this age becomes ethical, and the mortals of such an era are truly becoming moral beings. Wise moral beings are capable of establishing human brotherhood. In such a progressing world, ethical and moral beings can learn how to live in accordance with the golden rule. 6. The age of spiritual striving. When evolving mortals have passed through the physical, intellectual, and social stages of development, sooner or later they attain those levels of personal insight, which impel them to seek for spiritual satisfactions and cosmic understandings. Religion is completing the ascent from the emotional domains of fear and superstition to the high levels of cosmic wisdom and personal spiritual experience. Education aspires to the attainment of meanings, and culture grasps at cosmic relationships and true values. Such evolving mortals are genuinely cultured, truly educated, and exquisitely God-knowing. And then the 7th epoch, that is the era of light and life. This is the flowering of the successive ages of physical security intellectual expansion, social culture, and spiritual achievement. These human accomplishments are now blended, associated, and coordinated in cosmic unity and unselfish service. Within the limitations of finite nature and material endowments, there are no bounds set upon the possibilities of evolutionary attainment by the advancing generations who successively live upon these supernal and settled worlds of time and space. After surfing their spheres through successive dispensations of world history and the progressing epochs of planetary progress, the planetary princes are elevated to the position of planetary sovereigns upon the inauguration of the era of light and life. Point 6. Planetary culture. The isolation of Urantia renders it impossible to undertake the presentation of many details of the life and environment of your Satania neighbors. In these presentations we are limited by the planetary quarantine and by the system isolation. We must be guided by these restrictions in all our efforts to enlighten Urantia mortals, but insofar as is permissible. You have been instructed in the progress of an average evolutionary world, and you are able to compare such a world's career with the present state of Urantia. The development of the civilization on Urantia has not differed so greatly from that of other worlds which have sustained the misfortune of spiritual isolation. But when compared with the loyal worlds of the universe, your planet seems most confused and greatly retarded in all phases of intellectual progress and spiritual attainment. Because of your planetary misfortunes, Urantians are prevented from understanding very much about the culture of normal worlds, but you should not envisage the evolutionary worlds, even the most ideal, as spheres whereon life is a flowery bed of ease. The initial life of the mortal races is always attended by struggle. Many people in this world have a huge difficulty with believing and understanding that all the struggles, suffering, pain, emotions, and loss and unfortunates are part of the plan of God. Many people do not understand, because they lack a deeper understanding in this, that all that we go through is needed to have our soul grown into new levels of understanding ourselves, life, and the world we are living in, and the planet we are living on. It is because of this soul growth that we can develop ourselves into also new levels of spiritual understanding, and so cosmic connection. So if God wanted to have this world completely perfect, he can do so, but then you need to ask yourself the question, if this world was so tremendously perfect, how then is our soul able to make any soul progression? And how then is our soul be able to build soul character? So all this we are going through is needed for character building of our soul and soul growth. This is also needed because there are races, species, celestial races, species, that do never experience what it is to live a mortal life. But they need, in a certain way, for their progression, the information. So then we become their storytellers, so to speak, of what it is to live a life as a mortal being and what you can experience. There are transcendental beings who need this information. If they don't get this information, then they deprive. So the universe is also learning from what we are experiencing here. And this information is needed for other beings, their path of progression and learning. I continue. Effort and decision are an essential part of the acquirement of survival values. Culture presupposes quality of mind. Culture cannot be enhanced unless mind is elevated. Superior intellect will seek a noble culture and find some way to attain such a goal. Inferior minds will spurn the highest culture, even when presented to them ready-made. Much depends also upon the successive missions of the divine sons and upon the extent to which enlightenment is received by the ages of their respective dispensations. You should not forget that for 200,000 years all the worlds of Satania have rested under the spiritual ban of Melchizedek in consequences of the Lucifer rebellion, and it will require age upon age to retrieve the resultant handicaps of sin and secession. Your world still continues to pursue an irregular and checkered career as a result of the double tragedy of a rebellious planetary prince and a defaulting material son. Even the bestowal of Christ Michael on Urantia did not immediately set aside the temporal consequences of these serious blunders in the earlier administration of the world. 7. The last chapter, subchapter of this paper. The rewards of isolation. On first thought, it might appear that Urantia and its associated isolated worlds are most unfortunate in being deprived of the beneficent presence and influence of such superhuman personalities as a planetary prince and a material son and daughter. But isolation of these spheres affords their races a unique opportunity for the exercise of faith and for the development of a peculiar quality of confidence in cosmic reliability, which is not dependent on sight or any other material consideration. It may turn out eventually that mortal creatures hailing from the worlds quarantined in consequences of rebellion are extremely fortunate. We have discovered that such ascenders are very early entrusted with numerous special assignments to cosmic undertakings where unquestioned faith and sublime confidence are essential to achievement. So the you can also say what they are saying here is that there is also in a certain way a positive side on this and to this. On Jerusalem, the ascenders from these isolated worlds occupy a residential sector by themselves and are known as the agondonters. Agondonters, meaning evolutionary will creatures who can believe without seeing, persevere when isolated, and triumph over insuperable difficulties even when alone. This functional grouping of the agondonters persists throughout the ascension of the local universe and the traversal of the superuniverse. It disappears during the sojourn in Havona, but promptly reappears upon the attainment of paradise, and definitely persists in the corpse of the mortal finality. Tabamansia is an agondonter of finaliter status, having survived from one of the quarantined spheres involved in the first rebellion ever to take place in the universes of time and space. All through the paradise career, reward follows effort as the result of causes. Such rewards set off the individual from the average, providing a differential of creature experience, and contribute to the versatility of ultimate performances in the collective body of the finaliters. And with this said, I have come to the end of reading paper 50, which has been presented to us by a secondary Lanonandek son of the Reserve Corps. Very interesting paper, and I must say that there's so much interesting information in this section 2 that is all about the local universe. And yeah, I'm learning a lot. All right, I thank you so much for listening to this audio video, and I wish you all a beautiful, joyful day, and God bless you all in all the things that you are about to do and are achieving.